the best minds, many of which are white as well as black, is fighting a losing battle.
In a society filled with stigma, where scrutinizing eyes and societal prejudices weigh heavily, there are black stars who, despite the fame and success they possess, bravely come out as gay. However, fate cruelly gives these courageous individuals tragic endings as they leave this world in pain and solitude. Today we reflect on the 21 heartbreaking lives of famous Black LGBTQ+ individuals, talents who had to leave this world under sorrowful circumstances. 1. Sylvester James, the disco queen who died like a diva. Sylvester James, born in 1947, was a disco legend best known for the hit song "You Make Me Feel Mighty Real." More than just a musician, he was a symbol of the LGBTQ+ community. Sylvester dedicated his entire life to music, while also serving as a powerful figure for living authentically in a society filled with prejudice and pressure against homosexuality. His voice touched millions of hearts, yet in the end, fate chose to bury him in silence and sorrow. Not only was he famous for his musical talent, but he was also known for his free-spirited and unapologetic lifestyle, especially after coming out as gay during a time of intense discrimination. Sylvester James lived a sexually liberated life, never hesitating to express himself and always demanding freedom in his sexuality, particularly in a society that was not yet ready to accept that truth. In 1984, Sylvester began experiencing strange symptoms. Unexplained fatigue, rapid weight loss, and persistent body aches worried him. At first, he dismissed them as normal effects of stress and overwork. However, as the symptoms worsened, he decided to see a doctor. When Sylvester received the official diagnosis, he was in shock. The doctor confirmed that he had contracted HIV, which had progressed into AIDS, a disease that at the time was widely misunderstood and had no effective treatment. He would never forget the moment of disbelief upon hearing those words. His body was being ravaged without his knowledge, and by the time he realized it, it was already too late. From that point on, his life changed completely. He endured sleepless nights filled with pain, fever, and exhaustion, yet he still carried himself with the poise of a true diva. He refused to let anyone see him as weak or pitiful. Even as the illness slowly destroyed his body, Sylvester continued performing and attending events, striving to maintain his image as a dazzling star. By December 1988, Sylvester's condition had become critical. Despite his declining health, he attended a cozy Christmas gathering with friends and family. However, the pain was becoming unbearable. In the middle of a cheerful conversation, he suddenly felt a sharp, agonizing pain coursing through his body. He tried to smile, but his vision blurred, and the pain intensified relentlessly. While everyone around him laughed and enjoyed the holiday spirit, he knew he was standing on the edge of his final moments. After the party, Sylvester quietly returned home, weak and alone. He lay in bed, exhausted and in excruciating pain. Each moment was a battle against his own body, yet no one was there to comfort or care for him. The silence of his empty room became his only companion in his last days. On December 16, 1988, Sylvester James passed away in solitude, without a single loved one by his side. His death was not only the loss of a legendary diva, but also a heartbreaking tragedy. The story of a man who gave everything to music and his community, only to depart this world without the love and care he deserved. Sylvester's passing serves as a solemn reminder of the suffering the LGBTQ+ community endured during the height of the HIV/AIDS crisis, as well as the ignorance and neglect surrounding the disease at the time. 2. Paris Dupree, the creator of voguing, passed away in silence. Paris Dupree, the founder of the House of Dupree, left an indelible mark as an icon of the ballroom movement. She pioneered voguing, a dance style that gained widespread recognition in the 1980s and 1990s, largely due to the documentary Paris is Burning. This film helped introduce the art form into mainstream culture. However, despite her fame and significant influence within the ballroom community, Paris Dupree's life was marked by a tragedy that few people knew about. Like many in the LGBTQ+ community at the time, she lived a free-spirited and uninhibited romantic life. In an era with limited awareness and protective measures, unguarded relationships unknowingly put her at risk of contracting the deadly disease of the century. One fateful night while performing, Paris Dupree suffered an unexpected fall. Soon after, she began experiencing fatigue, dizziness, and slow-healing sores. When she finally sought medical attention, she was devastated to learn that she had contracted HIV/AIDS, a disease that gradually ravaged her body. Despite her declining health, Paris continued to attend community events with a smile, masking her pain. She fought to maintain her presence, but as her body deteriorated, isolation and the lack of proper care made her final days a heartbreaking struggle. By 2011, Paris was living alone in a small apartment in New York. Though she had achieved great success in her career, her last years were spent in solitude. No one was there to help or care for her. Her biological family had drifted away due to differences in lifestyle and societal stigma. Weary and frail, she no longer had the strength to fight both her illness and the crushing loneliness surrounding her. One night, as Paris lay in the quiet of her room, a sudden, sharp pain overtook her. Her body, now emaciated, was too weak to move or call for help. The cold in the room only intensified her agony. She could no longer resist the overwhelming pain. Immobilized, she remained still in a world of silence. No one knew that she had passed away until the heavy stench from her apartment alerted neighbors. Only then did people realize that Paris Dupree, the woman who had once shone so brightly, had died alone, with no one by her side. Paris Dupree's death was not just the end of a brilliant artist. It was a bitter reminder of those who lived in the shadows of society. People who devoted their lives to their communities, but were never given the care, love, or recognition they truly deserved. The final moments of an artist who once thrived in the spotlight were instead spent in the darkness of solitude, with no one there to share her pain. 3. James Baldwin, the exiled writer who fought until his last breath. James Baldwin, one of the greatest literary voices of the 20th century, dedicated his life to fighting for the rights of Black people and the LGBTQ+ community. However, his life was not just a story of literary success and social activism, it was also a relentless battle against stomach cancer. This illness was believed to have stemmed from years of heavy smoking, the immense pressures of living openly as a gay man, and the societal isolation he faced. Sleepless nights, violent coughing fits, and the emotional toll of his activism gradually weakened his body. By 1987, Baldwin's stomach cancer had reached its final stage, rendering all treatments futile. His last days were consumed by excruciating pain, yet his mind remained sharp. He continued to write, his words still carrying the fire of his lifelong struggle for justice and hope. The agony in his stomach worsened, leaving his frail body too weak to fight any longer. One morning, as the dim light of dawn filtered through the small window of his home in Saint-Paul-de-Vence, Baldwin felt a wave of pain unlike anything before. He tried to sit up, but his body had lost all strength. The relentless pain paralyzed him, making it impossible to move or call for help. His vision blurred, and in the silence of his room, he slipped away without a final word. Baldwin's death was not just the end of an extraordinary life. It was a quiet tragedy. Though he had family and friends by his side, he could never escape the loneliness that haunted him. Living as an openly gay man had left deep wounds in his soul, keeping him in a state of estrangement and solitude. His passing was an indescribable loss, as he never got to witness the change he had fought so tirelessly for. 4th, Bayard Rustin, the strategic mind of the civil rights movement, forgotten by history. Bayard Rustin, one of the pioneers of the American civil rights movement, stood out for organizing the 1963 March on Washington and serving as a close advisor to Martin Luther King Jr. Despite his crucial role in advancing the movement, Rustin received little recognition in history because of his sexuality. This aspect of his life forced him to live in the shadows, a tragedy in itself. As a gay man in a society filled with prejudice and discrimination, Rustin chose to live discreetly, not publicly revealing his identity for many years. However, his life, though quiet, was not without signs of loneliness and hardship, things that no one truly understood. By the late 1980s, as the HIV/AIDS epidemic began spreading widely within the gay community, Rustin could not avoid the risk. Years of limited knowledge about sexual health and self-protection led him to contract this cruel disease. Fatigue, loss of appetite, and a progressively weakening body were impossible to ignore. At first, Rustin thought the stomach pain was due to stress from his busy life, but when the sharp pain returned, he realized something terrible was happening inside him. One winter evening in New York, when the pain became unbearable, Rustin lay on his bed, weak and unable to get up. Crippling pain, violent coughing fits, and his deteriorating body left him unable to call for help. He lay there in silence, with only the dim light from the corner of the room casting shadows over his frail body. His vision gradually blurred, and his heart, though brave, ultimately could not withstand the illness. The room was left in silence, as if all the efforts and hopes he had devoted to the civil rights movement and the community were erased in a single, unnoticed moment. When his partner, Walter Nagel, returned to check on him, he found Rustin lying there, peaceful, yet tragically alone in the solitude he had endured throughout his life. Rustin's death was not just the end of a civil rights fighter, it was a tragedy, not only of a man who lived in the shadows, forced to hide his true self, but also a painful reminder of the isolation that so many gay men faced during those years. 5. Willi Ninja, the father of voguing, a legend who was never healed. Willi Ninja was one of the pioneers of the voguing movement and the founder of the House of Ninja. He gained widespread recognition as a dancer, choreographer, and central figure in the documentary Paris is Burning, which helped introduce voguing to the public and solidify its influence in mainstream culture. With his immense talent and relentless creativity, Willi played a crucial role in making voguing an essential part of the ballroom community and LGBTQ+ culture. However, in his early years, he engaged in unprotected sexual relationships and wild parties, lacking awareness of health protection, something very few people understood at the time. This uninhibited lifestyle eventually led to his diagnosis with AIDS, which was only discovered after a hospital admission. Despite his fame in the ballroom community, Willi's life was marked by loneliness and financial hardship. Without health insurance, he relied on community donations, struggling with his illness alone, without the necessary support as his health declined. Though the world celebrated him for his breathtaking dance moves, when he needed care and assistance the most, there was little the community could do to ease the suffering he endured in solitude. In 2006, Willi Ninja faced severe complications from AIDS, particularly heart failure. After a prolonged battle with the disease, his health deteriorated drastically. One morning at a hospital in New York, a sudden wave of pain struck, and his body could no longer endure. Due to financial struggles and his disconnection from the community after years away from the ballroom scene, he battled his illness in isolation, with no one to call upon for help. Although his death came in silence, when news of his passing spread, the ballroom community organized an emotional tribute. Dancers rose to perform voguing, honoring the man who had created a lasting legacy in the art form. Willi Ninja's legacy will never be forgotten. It lives on in every movement, in every step of voguing, and in the hearts of those who loved and admired him. 6. Essex Hemphill, the warrior poet who fought through the storm of tragedy. Essex Hemphill was a blazing force in American literature, known for ceremonies, prose, and poetry, a deeply personal and activist-driven work. He was celebrated as the poetic warrior of the Black LGBTQ+ community, using his words to expose painful truths during the late 20th century, a time when society was still drowning in prejudice. As a black gay man, he faced discrimination not only from outsiders, but also within his own community. He lived a liberated life, constantly searching for love, even though he knew that loneliness was an inevitable reality in that world. In the 1980s and early 1990s, when HIV/AIDS became an epidemic and awareness of the disease was still limited, Essex was unaware of its true dangers. Fleeting romances and dark nights in the ballroom scene made him forget the necessity of protection. At that time, the lack of knowledge about HIV prevention was a significant issue in the gay community, and like many others, Essex paid the ultimate price for this lack of caution. After years of living freely, Essex began experiencing unusual symptoms. His body grew weaker, unexplained pains intensified, and sores spread across his skin, signs of AIDS that he could no longer ignore. When he finally sought medical attention, doctors confirmed that he was HIV positive and in the final stages of the disease. As the illness consumed him, Essex refused hospitalization. Instead, he chose to return to his small room in Philadelphia, where he had dedicated his life to art and activism. By then, he was completely exhausted, reduced to a frail figure. Sleepless nights, relentless coughing fits, and unbearable pain left him struggling to endure. In his final moments, despite his fierce fight, he suffered alone, with no one to care for him. On the day Essex passed away, there were no colleagues or community members surrounding him, those he had spent his life fighting for. His room was silent, void of weeping or mourning. Though a few close friends and loved ones were present, they could do little to ease his suffering. His unfinished works lay scattered on the table, as if whispering the tragic story of a gay man who had endured isolation, rejection, and ultimately death due to the HIV/AIDS crisis. Essex Hemphill's death was not just the loss of a gifted poet. It was the tragic fate of a generation that lived in ignorance and lacked the support they desperately needed. 7. Ron Simmons, the hero who fell to an invisible scythe. In the heart of Washington, D.C. at the end of the 20th century, Ron Simmons, born in 1950, was a symbol of resilience and courage. As the director of Us Helping Us, a pioneering organization supporting black gay men in the fight against HIV/AIDS, he was not just a leader. He was a silent hero, deeply respected and admired by his community. With every step, he guided, supported, and brought hope to those battling the devastating disease, lighting up paths that were once shrouded in darkness. Yet, tragically, he himself could not overcome the greatest storm of his life. Ron Simmons lived a liberated gay lifestyle, unaware of the dangers of HIV/AIDS. He contracted the disease after fleeting romances and indulgent parties during the early years of the epidemic. Unprotected relationships and a lack of knowledge about health precautions led him to tragedy. Although he began experiencing symptoms such as fatigue and sores, he continued to hide his illness out of fear of stigma, making his battle with the disease even more painful and lonely. It wasn't until one day when his symptoms worsened drastically. Ron suffered from severe stomach pain and rapid health deterioration. His condition became so severe that he could no longer continue working, and he finally decided to seek medical attention. After undergoing tests, doctors confirmed he had contracted HIV, a diagnosis that left Ron terrified. The disease had already been ravaging his body from the inside, and not long after, he was hospitalized due to severe heart failure complications. At the hospital, despite the pain, Ron refused to give up hope. But as the days passed, he grew weaker, and no efforts could reverse his decline. In 2020, as his health plummeted, he was admitted to the hospital once again, this time for the last time. Overwhelmed by pain and exhaustion, he lay in his hospital bed, alone. Though his devoted partner was by his side, Ron deeply felt the loneliness and the years of silent suffering he had endured. His death was not only a tragedy because HIV/AIDS claimed the life of a resilient man, but also because of the solitude and years of struggling alone while society turned its back on him. The world failed to recognize his sacrifices and contributions until he was gone. 8. Toni Washington. the disco voice that faded into oblivion. Imagine the 1970s, when Tony Washington was a part of the Dynamic Superiors, a disco group that captivated hearts while daring to reveal a shocking truth. He was the first black singer in R&B and disco to publicly acknowledge his homosexuality. Yet, the world, full of prejudice, was unforgiving. Tony Washington lived in an era where being openly gay came with relentless discrimination. He faced rejection not only from society, but also from the music industry itself. His nights performing in small clubs were not just an effort to cling to his dreams, but also a way to mask the pain of loneliness and his failing career. However, those long, dark nights, coupled with a reckless lifestyle and unsafe sexual encounters during an era of limited knowledge, led him into the clutches of HIV/AIDS. By the end of 1989, Tony Washington was living in a rundown apartment in Washington, D.C., where only loneliness and illness remained. The dimly lit room, its windows covered with old curtains, was a place where no one shared his suffering. AIDS consumed his body day by day, leaving him gaunt and frail. His health rapidly declined, his eyes sunken, and one fateful night, he collapsed onto the floor, too weak to call for help. Death arrived in silence. No one noticed until the stench of decay filled the air, lingering for days. It wasn't until a friend, making a final visit, encountered a locked door and the overpowering smell that his body was discovered. When they opened the door, they found him, a lifeless, emaciated figure, staring blankly at the cracked ceiling, as if his spirit had long departed in utter despair. No one had been there in his final moments. No comfort, no farewell, only silence and an unspeakable sorrow. Tony's death was not just the end of a life filled with talent and unfulfilled dreams. It was a painful reminder of the prejudice and abandonment he had suffered throughout his existence. 9. Glenn Burke, the disappearance of a baseball hero. Glenn Burke, one of the first professional baseball players to come out as gay, lived in a society rife with prejudice and a lack of understanding about HIV/AIDS. In an era when acceptance of homosexuality was extremely limited, he was forced to hide his true self, seeking intimacy through unsafe relationships, which left him vulnerable to HIV infection without proper protection. Despite his exceptional athletic talent, Burke faced rejection when he came out, losing support from teammates and MLB leadership, leading to the collapse of his baseball career. Isolated and struggling, he drifted from hotel rooms to small clubs, but HIV/AIDS gradually consumed his body, stripping away his strength and hope. His final days were spent in loneliness and suffering. As the disease progressed, those around him distanced themselves, leaving him to endure his illness alone. Without support from the sports community, with no one to comfort or encourage him, he became an outsider in the world he once belonged to. Then, in 1995, at a nursing home in Oakland, California, Glenn Burke's journey came to a quiet end. His frail body, barely holding on, took its final, weak breaths. His sister Lutha and a few close friends remained by his side, yet the overwhelming solitude of his last moments was undeniable. AIDS had drained his life away, and in the silence of his room, Burke passed, without former teammates, without fans, without the world knowing that one of the first to live his truth in a prejudiced society had left it. His death marked the tragic end of a life filled with adversity and deep sorrow, a life that never received the love, recognition, or acknowledgement he so rightfully deserved. 10. Octavia Butler, the fateful fall of the sci-fi queen. Born in 1947, Octavia Butler was a celebrated science fiction writer, known for influential works such as Kindred and Parable of the Sower. She was not only a brilliant author, but also a pioneer in bringing social issues, human rights, and gender equality into literature. However, behind the pages of her groundbreaking works, Butler faced a life full of challenges, especially in relation to her identity as a lesbian. Though she never publicly discussed her personal life, Butler was known within literary and artistic circles as a lesbian, yet she carefully avoided public scrutiny. Living and working in an environment rife with prejudice against LGBTQ+ individuals, she kept her love life private, building same-sex relationships in silence. Nevertheless, she remained a steadfast advocate for equality and LGBTQ+ acceptance, even if she never openly disclosed her truth. In the 1990s, Butler began experiencing severe back pain and chronic fatigue with no clear cause. Over time, the pain intensified, and her body gradually weakened. After seeking medical attention, she was diagnosed with a severe degenerative spinal disease, a condition that severely impaired her mobility and caused excruciating pain. Despite her illness, Butler continued to write, refusing to let the disease crush her spirit. However, as her health declined further, prolonged pain left her too weak to hold a pen as she once had. The disease slowly robbed her of her ability to move, leaving her frail and exhausted, unable to complete the stories she had carried within her for so long. Though she had always been resilient, her body eventually succumbed to the relentless burden of her illness. On February 24, 2006, Octavia Butler passed away quietly in Lake Forest Park, Washington. She collapsed in her home, her vision fading, her body unable to respond, her extraordinary life ending in silence. There were speculations that she suffered a fatal fall during a dizzy spell, with no one nearby to help, despite having close friends and family. When she was found, all that remained was the stillness of the room and the heartbreaking reality of a brilliant life cut short by illness. She departed without witnessing the societal change she had long hoped for, without seeing a world more accepting and equal for the LGBTQ+ community. 11th. Audre Lorde, the unyielding voice of strength and hope silenced. Audre Lorde, a Black lesbian poet and feminist activist, dedicated her life to fighting for the rights of the LGBTQ+ community and women. Her existence was not only defined by her powerful literary works, but also by her relentless battle against discrimination and loneliness. Lorde came out as a lesbian early in life, a bold and challenging act for her time. Society and even her own family struggled to accept her, yet she never wavered. Her same-sex relationships were never widely acknowledged, forcing her to navigate life with hidden aspects of herself. Still, she persisted, using her work to empower those like her. In the early 1980s, while continuing her literary contributions, Lorde noticed changes in her body. A sharp pain in her chest did not immediately concern her, but it gradually worsened. One day, while bathing, she discovered a lump and decided to seek medical attention, only to be diagnosed with breast cancer. By the time she was diagnosed, the disease had already spread. Though her health declined, Lorde never stopped writing. Even as her body withered and pain overtook her, she continued her advocacy. Breast cancer, still poorly understood and under-researched at the time, relentlessly consumed her, gradually stripping away her strength and spirit. In her final years, Audre Lorde endured unbearable pain but remained steadfast. In St. Croix, U.S. Virgin Islands, where she spent her last days, she lay in bed, her eyes reflecting her unwavering spirit despite her failing breath. In the arms of her partner, Gloria III Joseph, and surrounded by loved ones, she whispered the words, "Warrior Survivor," before departing. Cancer had invaded her body entirely, but through it all, she never stopped inspiring those who fought for justice. Audre Lorde's death was not a tragic ending, but a transition. The values she championed lived on, continuing to inspire generations striving for equality, acceptance, and freedom. 12th. Alvin Ailey, the dimming dance of a silent legacy. Alvin Ailey, born in 1931, was an icon in the world of dance and the founder of the Alvin Ailey American Dance Theater, which helped bring modern dance into the cultural fabric of Black America. With unparalleled talent, he became a source of pride for his community, a shining star on stage. Yet, behind the grandeur, Ailey carried a silent pain throughout his life. This secrecy began when Ailey, living in a society that did not accept homosexuality, started noticing unusual symptoms in his body in the late 1980s. Persistent fatigue, unexplained weakness, and frequent fevers prompted him to seek medical attention. After numerous tests, doctors diagnosed him with HIV/AIDS, a disease still poorly understood and heavily stigmatized at the time. The diagnosis was a devastating blow for Ailey, who had spent his life hiding not only his sexuality, but now also his deteriorating health. Determined to protect his legacy and his dance company from societal backlash, he instructed his friends and loved ones to keep the cause of his illness a secret. He told them he had a blood disease, avoiding any mention of AIDS. In 1989, as his condition worsened, Ailey succumbed to the illness in quiet solitude at a New York City hospital. His exhausted body finally stilled, like a fading dance reaching its final movement. Close friends and a few members of his dance company stood by, witnessing his departure in silence. No last words, no whispered regrets. Alvin Ailey's death was not just the loss of a legendary artist, but a heartbreaking tale of a man burdened by societal prejudice, forced into loneliness even in his final moments. 13. Joseph Beam, the forgotten pen of literature. Joseph Beam was one of the pioneering writers who depicted the lives of black gay men through his work In the Life, a black gay anthology. His life and career were an unrelenting struggle to amplify the voices of the Black LGBTQ+ community, a community long oppressed and overlooked by society. Beam used his pen to tell stories that had never been acknowledged, helping the world recognize the existence and right to live of those who had been marginalized. However, Beam lived in a difficult era when AIDS was rampant, and gay men faced fear and ignorance surrounding the disease. For years, he refused to rest, dedicating himself entirely to his writing. Although he had a small but supportive community by his side, he often felt lonely and pushed to the fringes of society. Even as he faced the harsh reality of his illness, he chose to remain silent about his health, with no one knowing that he had contracted HIV. In 1988, Beam's health began to deteriorate drastically. One morning, he felt exhausted and weak, yet he still pushed himself to continue writing. After enduring persistent fevers and relentless pain, he began to experience difficulty breathing, his strength fading with each passing day. Eventually, when he could no longer care for himself, a close friend, alarmed after failing to reach him, went to his apartment, only to find Beam lying motionless on his bed, frail and unable to move. Joseph Beam passed away in solitude and silence. AIDS had quietly drained the life from his body, leaving him increasingly fragile. His death was not just the loss of an individual, but a painful reminder of a community abandoned by society. 14. Luther Vandross, a music legend who departed in solitude. Luther Vandross, one of the most iconic R&B voices of the late 20th century, captivated the world with timeless hits like Dance with My Father and Here and Now. However, throughout his career, he remained intensely private about his personal life, particularly regarding his sexuality. Though rumors swirled about a long-term same-sex relationship, Vandross chose to live discreetly, avoiding public and media scrutiny. Years of relentless dedication to music, an overwhelming schedule, and the pressure of creativity gradually drained him. Unbeknownst to him, diabetes was silently ravaging his body. At first, he dismissed the persistent fatigue and slow-healing wounds, pushing through to continue his work. But as the disease worsened, it weakened his immune system, turning every recording session and tour into a grueling challenge. By 2003, a severe stroke, one of the complications of diabetes, left him largely incapacitated and confined to a wheelchair. From that moment, his dream of performing on stage again was extinguished, leaving him to witness his own body slowly deteriorating, powerless to stop it. In 2005, on a quiet morning at a hospital in Edison, New Jersey, Luther Vandross passed away in silence. Sitting in his wheelchair, his frail body gave in, his eyes closing for the last time. Family and his manager stood by, watching as his breaths grew fainter until life fully slipped away. His death, though long anticipated, carried with it the sorrow of a music legend who left the world in solitude, unable to fully live as his true self. Though his voice has faded, the music of Luther Vandross continues to live on in the hearts of fans, cementing his eternal legacy in the world of R&B. 15. Alfred Charles, a melancholy note in the life of a musician. Alfred Charles, a prominent musician of the 1970s, brought deeply heartfelt songs to the Black and LGBTQ+ communities. Though his name may not be widely recognized, his sincere melodies continue to resonate with those who have heard them. He lived in an era rife with prejudice against gay individuals, forcing him to conceal his sexuality to protect both his career and personal safety. Engaging in unprotected relationships and lacking awareness of HIV/AIDS, common issues in society at the time, ultimately led to his diagnosis with the devastating disease. Despite his declining health, he remained active in artistic events and advocacy for the LGBTQ+ community, yet his condition steadily worsened. As AIDS ravaged his body, his life gradually faded into darkness. Sleepless nights and persistent high fevers drained his energy. One morning, an unusual silence enveloped his apartment. A neighbor, accustomed to the sounds of music and joyful noise from Alfred's home, sensed something was wrong. No music, no footsteps, no familiar melodies. They knocked on the door. No answer. When they finally entered, they found Alfred lying motionless on the floor, his face pale, his body too weak to respond. The room was eerily quiet, with unfinished records scattered around and unmounted artwork resting against the walls. HIV/AIDS had slowly stolen his vitality, leaving him frail and exhausted. Alfred passed away in solitude, with no one there to care for him. Yet, his music and artistry remain, forever echoing in the hearts of those who cherished his work. 16. Jackie Shane, a trailblazing singer who passed away in pain. Jackie Shane was not just a talented soul singer of the 1960s, but also one of the first Black artists to boldly live as her true self. Born in 1940, she grew up in an era where people like her were seen as different, ostracized and discriminated against by society. Too feminine to be accepted as a man, yet not fully recognized as a woman, Jackie Shane remained steadfast in her identity, wearing dresses, applying makeup flamboyantly, and performing with fearless authenticity. On stage, she didn't just sing, she declared her existence, without hiding, without apology. But no matter how strong one is, time and illness are inescapable. In her later years, Jackie Shane lived in seclusion in a small house in Nashville, Tennessee. Once a sanctuary of peace, it eventually became the place where she witnessed her own slow decline. Years of high blood pressure and diabetes weakened her immune system, leaving her body increasingly frail. No longer able to get out of bed, her legs swelled, and pressure sores formed from lying in one position for too long. Fatigue overtook her, making eating and self-care nearly impossible. The phone rarely rang. No more cheers, no more applause, just shallow breaths in the silence of an empty room. One winter morning in 2016, the only neighbor who still checked in on her knocked on the door. No response. When they entered, Jackie Shane lay motionless in her bed, her face pale, eyes barely closed, surrounded by bottles of prescription medication, a testament to her long, lonely battle with illness. She passed away in absolute silence. No immediate headlines, no public outcry. It was only after the news spread that the LGBTQ+ community remembered and honored her as a true icon, a person who dared to live authentically, even when the world wasn't ready to accept her. 17. Vernita Gray, the activist who fell after a long journey. Born in 1949, Vernita Gray was not only a pioneering Black LGBTQ+ activist, but also a woman who dared to live authentically at a time when same-sex love was still considered taboo. She loved openly, lived openly, and defied societal discrimination. She fought not only for marriage equality, but also became the first woman in Illinois to legally marry her same-sex partner. A small but deeply meaningful victory that came at the cost of a lifetime of tireless activism. Yet, despite dedicating her life to helping others, she could not escape her own fate. As she entered the later years of her life, she began experiencing persistent fatigue and vague, lingering pain. Initially, she dismissed it as signs of aging, But as her body weakened and she lost significant weight, the reality became undeniable. One day, after waking up with excruciating chest pain, she decided to seek medical attention. The diagnosis shocked both her and those around her. Cancer had been silently spreading throughout her body. In Chicago, Illinois, Vernita Gray passed away in the very room where she had spent years fighting for justice. Her frail body, her fading eyes, one might say they reflected on the long road she had walked, from marches and speeches for equality to the lonely moments when the world turned its back on her. No one was there in her final moments, yet everyone knew that illness had slowly drained her strength until she could fight no more. She departed in silence, without the full recognition that her sacrifices deserved. She dedicated her life to equality, yet when she closed her eyes for the last time, she had not yet seen the world she had dreamed of. Vernita Gray, a black lesbian woman who endured lifelong discrimination, never stopped fighting for her community until her last breath. The legacy she left behind was not in medals or awards, but in her courage, perseverance, and the fire that continues to burn in those she inspired. 18. Billy Strayhorn, the final chapter of a brilliant composer. Billy Strayhorn, the genius behind many of Duke Ellington's greatest compositions, was a man whose talent transcended time. His music shaped the world of jazz, but behind the brilliance was a man who faced the harsh realities of being both black and gay in mid-century America. Throughout his life, Strayhorn lived with quiet dignity, refusing to hide who he was. He found love, companionship, and artistic fulfillment. Yet his health began to betray him far too soon. In the early 1960s, he began experiencing severe fatigue, pain, and unexplained weakness. At first, he ignored the symptoms, chalking them up to stress and exhaustion. But as the pain worsened, he had no choice but to seek medical help. The diagnosis was grim: esophageal cancer, a disease that would soon strip him of his voice, his strength, and ultimately, his life. In 1967, Billy Strayhorn passed away in New York City, surrounded by close friends, but marked by the silent suffering of a man who had given so much to music, yet never received the full recognition he deserved. Though his name was often overshadowed by Ellington, his compositions continued to live on. His death was not just the end of a musical era. It was a reminder of the countless black queer artists whose contributions were never fully acknowledged during their lifetimes. 19. Josephine Baker, a brilliant icon who faded away in loneliness. Born in 1906 in Missouri, Josephine Baker was one of the first black entertainers to gain international fame. During the 1920s and 1930s, she became a top star in Paris, a symbol of the Harlem Renaissance and a trailblazer for the liberation of black women. But behind the spotlight, few knew that Josephine was a lesbian, involved in deep, meaningful relationships with other female artists and activists of her time, truths she was forced to keep hidden throughout her career. By the 1970s, after dedicating her life to human rights activism and adopting 12 children from around the world, Josephine found herself in dire financial straits, her health rapidly declining. On April 8, 1975, following a triumphant performance celebrating her 50-year career in Paris, Josephine suffered a cerebral hemorrhage and fell into a deep coma. She passed away a few days later in a quiet hospital room at Pitié-Salpêtrière Hospital. No partner, no close family by her side. Josephine Baker left this world in solitude, despite spending her life fighting for a more compassionate society. 20. Barbara Jordan, the trailblazing politician who fell silent. Born in 1936 in Houston, Texas, Barbara Jordan rose to prominence in the 1960s and 1970s as one of the first black women elected to the U.S. Congress. She became the powerful voice of the civil rights movement, known for her fiery speeches, especially during the impeachment hearings against President Nixon. Yet her private life remained a guarded mystery. Barbara was a lesbian in a long-term relationship with Nancy Earle, but she never came out publicly, fearing the harsh discrimination of the political world. By the mid-1980s, Barbara was battling multiple sclerosis, which later progressed to leukemia and chronic pneumonia. The illness eventually confined her to a wheelchair during her final years. On January 17, 1996, Barbara Jordan died of pneumonia complications in a hospital in Austin, Texas. At her bedside were Nancy Earle and a handful of close friends. The woman who had once been a national symbol of civil rights passed quietly, her true identity still hidden from a public that never fully knew her. 21st. Mabel Hampton, the freedom fighter who died in exhaustion. Born in 1902 in Winston-Salem, North Carolina, Mabel Hampton was a celebrated dancer during the Harlem Renaissance of the 1920s and 30s. She later became a pioneering LGBTQ+ activist in New York during the second half of the 20th century, using her own life story to fight for equality and social justice. As one of the few openly lesbian women of her time, Mabel shared a 46-year love story with her partner, Lillian Foster, a relationship she proudly spoke of at community forums and conferences. After Lillian's death in 1978, Mabel lived alone in a modest apartment in New York City. In her final years, she struggled with chronic lung disease, the result of years of hard labor and harsh living conditions. Without health insurance and relying on financial support from her community, Mabel became physically and emotionally exhausted. On October 26, 1989, she died alone in her apartment, bringing to an end a courageous and unyielding life. When her body was found, the room held only old love letters and memories of Lillian, a testament to a life of love that was never fully recognized by the society she fought so hard to change. As we reflect on these 21 extraordinary yet heartbreaking lives, each story reminds us that everyone deserves respect, regardless of their identity or background. The loss of these Black LGBTQ+ icons, who bravely lived their truth, leaves behind an indescribable sorrow and deep reflection. Which of these stories moved you the most? Share your thoughts in the comments so we can honor the invaluable legacies they have left behind together.